Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Mission Magic. I'm Lucy Macara, host of the Mission Magic Women's Group. I'm the founder of Book Magic AI and Rethink Press, and the author of 14 books. In these Mission Magic sessions, I talk to mission-led women about their brilliant new ideas, concepts, and visions. And today we're really privileged to have Jean Gibson with us. Jean is an ADHD life coach and coach instructor with the iACTCenter. She's a former project manager and resource manager, and she's the author of the ADHD Support Group. Equally important, Jean is a mum of 4, grandmother of 8, with another one on the way, I think, and 3 of her grandchildren have ADHD, and 2 have both autism and ADHD. Jean's family's ADHD story spans decades, and this is what makes her a true expert on the subject. Jean, we're very keen to hear how you can take us from chaos to calm, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Hello, everybody. What I'd like to do first is put my slides up, and then I can take you through my slides and share my presentation with you. So just give me one moment. Once I share my screen. Hopefully you can all see my screen. So welcome and thank you. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to be here. I really appreciate your time. And I also want to thank Lucy and Michaela for their mentorship and the opportunity to share my mission with all of you. It's important for me to thank Laurie Dupar, rather, from the iACTCenter. She's the founder and the director of the International ADHD Coach Training Centre, who, whilst training with her, and after I completed my training with her, she encouraged and really inspired me on this path with ADHD. So much so that she invited me to join the faculty, her team, as a coach instructor. So now I'm able to work with individuals from around the world, helping them to become certified ADHD life coaches. I also want to recognise a couple of other people who are here. So Mary, I want to thank you in particular for your support as I was beginning my journey with ADHD. Your kindness, your mentorship, thank you so much. And I'm really proud and pleased that you're here today, Mary. My biggest cheerleaders, though, are my daughter and my family. They support everything that I do and encourage me to keep going. And my daughter Lynette in particular allows me to share our journey and our story with ADHD. And our journey is the basis of the book that I wrote, the ADHD Support Handbook. And I have to thank her and continue to, because we support each other as we continue our journey and as I continue my mission to help other families living with ADHD to thrive. Okay. So let me take you back to a morning in my house about 35 years ago. It was in the mid to late 80s, 90s. I had 4 children, a busy household, and I was developing my career. So I was working full time. And I had absolutely no idea that something called ADHD even existed. There were no books, no resources, no internet. Teachers might have noticed a child being distracted or perhaps underperforming because they weren't meeting the milestones expected of particular age groups. But the word ADHD was never used, not in my time. I'd never heard anybody use that word. And as a parent, I carried so much guilt. I thought it must be me, that I wasn't strict enough, that I wasn't consistent enough, that I wasn't good enough because one of my children was struggling at school. So mornings were chaos. Someone couldn't find their shoes. Someone else had a meltdown over the clothes that they were wearing that didn't feel right for them. And we'd pile into the car, everyone in tears, and I'd think, it shouldn't be this hard. Hands up if you've had mornings like that. Maybe even this week, perhaps. Yes, I can see you. Today, I want to show you how to start moving your family from that place of chaos into a calmer, more connected home. Not overnight, not perfectly, but step by step. As Lucy said, I have eight grandchildren and one on the way. And 3 of my grandchildren are diagnosed with ADHD, and 2 of them are diagnosed with both ADHD and autism. And just a few years ago, my eldest daughter was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 42. So when I talk about ADHD, I'm not just talking or speaking as a coach. I'm speaking as a mum, as a grandmother who's lived the chaos, felt the guilt, and had to find a way to turn things around. My mission continues. And while I'll be focusing on families today, these same struggles often show up in the workplace. Many parents are quietly managing ADHD at home while juggling jobs. Many adults themselves are undiagnosed, experiencing the same chaos and self-doubt in professional settings. What I share today can help both at home and at work. My mission has expanded. So as I said, in the early 1980s, or mid to late 1980s, I had no idea what ADHD was. As I said, teachers might notice a behaviour, being distracted or underperforming, but the condition wasn't named. There were no books that I was aware of, no Google searches, just guilt. And as a parent, I thought it must be me. Looking back, I wish someone had told me, Jean, this isn't your fault, and more discipline isn't the answer. So I did what parents were told to do at that time: more discipline, more consequences, more charts, but it didn't work. Because ADHD isn't just a problem with motivation. As I learnt more about the condition, my mission became clearer. The more parents I spoke to, the more my understanding of what I needed to do grew. My mission is to help at least 10,000 people living with ADHD to transform their lives and to thrive. Now, many people with ADHD struggle with their executive function. So let me explain a bit more about the executive function. It's the brain's management system, and it sits in the prefrontal cortex, which is just behind our foreheads. And like the conductor of an orchestra, it coordinates attention, time, planning, and follow through. When ADHD is present, the conductor often doesn't show up or gets distracted by the trumpet while the violins are waiting. That's why children with ADHD can struggle to start tasks, so task initiation, to stick with a task, sustaining their attention on a task, finishing a task, so task completion, or estimating time. And we kind of call that time blindness and being aware of the passing of time. So when you say, as a parent, just go and do your homework, you're actually asking their brain to juggle multiple skills that aren't working smoothly together. And when discipline is added on top of it, it only piles shame onto the struggle. And shame, you might be thinking, why shame? Because they understand that their peers are able to do things and they're not. And so they feel ashamed that they're not able to do the things that they're expected to do. So another way to think of executive function is like an air traffic controller at a busy airport. For most people, planes land and take off in order. For ADHD, the control tower is sometimes asleep, and suddenly 5 aeroplanes are trying to land at once. No amount of shouting at the tower fixes that. What's needed is extra systems and support. And here's the workplace link. The same executive function challenges show up for adults in jobs, struggling to prioritise emails, missing deadlines, getting lost in details, or showing up late. These are not laziness, but the ADHD brain at work. I work with employees at all levels of organisations, and by the time they get to me, or by the time they come to me, they're either on a performance plan or they're struggling to maintain their performance. They may or may not have disclosed their ADHD or feel that they may have ADHD because they recognise the symptoms. Human resources and managers, line managers, supervisors often misinterpret these behaviours when what's really needed is understanding and supportive systems. It's important to note that for employees, it can be a challenge whether to disclose or not. I've worked with individuals who have disclosed and it's worked well for them and they've got the support in place they need. I've also worked with clients who have not disclosed and it's been an even more of a bigger challenge for them. So it's a decision that an individual will need to make about disclosing or not. But I think the more that there is a better understanding of ADHD, the more comfortable individuals with neurodiverse conditions will feel about disclosing to their employers. I have a reflection question for you. How many of you have felt like nothing works and wondered if maybe you were failing as a parent? Just a thought. Here's what I wish I knew back then. It's not you. It's the patterns in the home that keep you stuck. So now let's have a look at those patterns. What are the 3 patterns that we talk about? So now, decades later, I see the same patterns show up with my grandchildren. And even though we now have the diagnosis and the language that I didn't have back then, these patterns are so common in ADHD families that sometimes they become invisible. So let me share them with you in a bit more detail. So the 3 common patterns that I see in ADHD families, patterns that I recognise from my own children years ago and again now with my grandchildren. The first one being firefighting mode. So every day feels like a crisis. You're reacting to the meltdowns, the next meltdown, the lost shoe, the forgotten homework. The brain's stress response is fight, flight, or freeze, and it's constantly activated. And when a child lives in that state, they aren't learning how to regulate. They're just surviving. And parents, we get pulled in too. We live in fight or flight alongside them, rushing from one crisis to the next. This is why self-care matters. If our nervous system is always triggered, we can't bring calm to theirs. Without clear routine, the day starts in chaos, tears, resistance, and shouting, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. Teams, so the workplace with ADHD colleagues can feel like this too. Always reacting to missed deadlines, last-minute changes or urgent requests. Without structure, the whole team feels like it's in constant crisis. Leaders who stay calm and provide clear systems reduce stress for everyone. So again, imagine you're the captain of a ship in a storm. If the captain panics, the crew panics too. Calm leadership steadies the ship. Let's look at pattern 2, over-explaining. Parents think if I just explain better, they'll get it. But here's the catch. Many children with ADHD struggle to hold more than one instruction at a time. And I'm going to say that, and I'm saying that generally, but remembering that the symptoms of ADHD show up differently in all individuals. So you may not get 2 children with ADHD displaying those symptoms exactly the same. So what I say is generally, it might be that a child with ADHD may be able to manage 2-step instructions, but some may only be able to cope with 1. So bear that in mind as I share my thoughts. So as I said, children with ADHD struggle to hold more than 1 instruction at a time because of working memory challenges. So we give long lectures or repeat instructions in 10 different ways. But with the ADHD brain, it switches off quickly. And instead of clarity, children feel overwhelmed. There's something called the task mode network, or TMN. It's the brain system for focusing on one task and ignoring distractions. In ADHD, this system is underactive. So the more we pile on, clean your room, pack your bag, brush your teeth, and don't forget your shoes, the more they shut down. In the workplace, managers sometimes do the same thing, overloading staff with long emails or too many steps at once. For an ADHD employee, this can mean shutdown or mistakes. Clear, concise, 1 or 2-step instructions can transform outcomes. I was speaking to a female employee last week who shared exactly this problem. It's like trying to load too many tabs on an old computer, or even for me, I have a new computer and I sometimes have more than 70 tabs open and my computer can slow down. But basically, when you've got too many things going on, the system will shut down. Let's now look at the third pattern, exhausted resignation. And this is when parents get so tired of the battles that they give up. And I choose the word battle specifically because when I'm talking to parents, they often use the word fight or battle because they're constantly looking for support, they're constantly looking for solutions, they're constantly in need of something, and it's usually always a fight and a battle. So that word is intentional. Bedtime becomes whenever they finally collapse. Meals become eat whatever you want, and mornings become a scramble. Rules fade away. I've seen this with my grandchildren around sleep when they stay with me. Without a clear routine, they'd be awake late into the night, and mornings would become a disaster. Everyone is overtired and dysregulated, and the cycle gets worse. These patterns don't happen because parents don't care. They happen because families are exhausted and don't have the right tools. But children crave boundaries. They're like climbing roses. They grow wild without a trellis, but with gentle structure, they can flourish. In business, this looks like disengagement. Employees who feel they can't meet expectations may give up, avoid projects, or mentally check out. Gentle boundaries like clear role expectations, regular check-ins, and flexible supports provide scaffolding for success. Boundaries are not a cage, they're scaffolding. They don't restrict growth, they support it. Another reflection question for you. Of these three boundaries, or these three patterns rather, firefighting, over-explaining, or resignation, which one feels most familiar in your home right now? Or which patterns do you notice often in your teams? Feel free to put your answer in the chat, 1, 2, or 3, or just reflect quietly to yourself about what you've observed. I'll give you a moment for that. Okay. So as a young mum, as I've said, in the 80s and 90s, I thought the answer was to overhaul everything. More rules, stricter discipline, new systems. But here's the truth. Families don't change through massive overhauls. They change through small intentional shifts, repeated consistently. One of the biggest discoveries I've made as a coach is that ADHD brains thrive on predictability and dopamine. Routines give predictability. Small wins create dopamine, that feel-good chemical that motivates us. So when we create little rituals that children can succeed in, we rewire the brain toward calm and cooperation. Take my grandson, for example. Bedtime was chaos. We didn't change the whole evening. We added one small ritual. The same 3 steps every night. Bath, story, lights out. Within weeks, the meltdowns reduced because his brain began to anticipate safety. I used this techniques recently when they stayed with me during the summer holidays. It was great to have time and space each night without the tech, to either read together, share a story, or just chat about our plans for during that day and our plans for the following day before lights out. It took them a couple of nights to get used to the process, but they then enjoyed that. And this isn't just for the kids. Parents benefit too. When we reduce firefighting, we reduce our own stress hormones. Our nervous system calms down, and suddenly we have more patience. In business, small, consistent adjustments matter just as much. A manager who builds in 10 minutes at the start of a meeting for clarity, or an entrepreneur who sets up one simple planning ritual each morning, can change the whole tone of the week. These micro changes reduce overwhelm and unlock productivity. Small changes are like turning a large ship. You don't spin the whole wheel all at once. You make tiny, steady adjustments. At first, it feels like nothing is happening, but soon you realize the whole course has shifted. Another reflection question for you. What's one small change you could make this week that would reduce stress in your home, even just a little bit? And if you're thinking about your workplace, what is one small adjustment that could reduce firefighting for your team? Take a moment to think about that. If you'd like to share in the chat, please do. But think about it for yourself, for your own environment. Just one small change, what impact would that have for you? Okay, so here's the most important piece. Strategies are powerful. but they won't stick unless we make one fundamental mindset shift. Stop seeing ADHD as a problem to fix and start seeing it as a brain to understand. For years, I thought my children just needed to try harder or have problems that needed fixing. I didn't understand why starting a task, finishing homework, or even just getting out the door felt impossible. I saw behaviour instead of brain differences. Now I know that ADHD impacts emotional regulation too. Children with ADHD often feel emotions more intensely and take longer to return to calm. This is why meltdowns can feel like hurricanes. They aren't being dramatic. Their nervous system is genuinely overwhelmed. When parents shift their mindset, they stop asking, "Why won't my child listen?" and instead ask, "What does my child's brain need right now to succeed?" That mindset shift is even clearer to me now with my grandchildren. One of my granddaughters with ADHD also has autism. And when she struggles, it isn't because she's being difficult, it's because the world feels overwhelming to her. When I approach her with curiosity and compassion instead of correction, I see her confidence rise. It is beautiful to witness. Mindset isn't just about helping our children, it's about helping them to see their worth, their resilience, and their potential. Leaders can adopt the same mindset. Instead of asking, "Why can't my colleague focus?" they can ask, "What does this brain need to perform well?" That one shift from frustration to curiosity transform how neurodivergent employees feel at work. And when employees feel valued, their confidence and contribution grows. Think of ADHD like a manual car with a tricky clutch. You can't drive it the same way as an automatic. It's not broken. It just needs a different approach. Once you learn how, you can go just as far, sometimes even further. Another reflection question for you. What would shift in your home if you stopped seeing ADHD as something to fix? And for those of you, and started seeing it as something to understand and to work with. And for those of you in the workplace, how would your workplace change if you applied this same mindset? So if you've seen yourself in these patterns, firefighting, over-explaining, exhaustion, you're not alone. Families don't get stuck because they don't care. They get stuck because ADHD requires a different map. Just like an air traffic controller needs radar or a ship's captain needs a compass, parents need tools that work with the ADHD brain. That's what my program, Thriving Together with ADHD, is about. You don't have to keep doing this alone. That's why I created Thriving Together with ADHD, my small group coaching program. It's the program that I wish I had back in the 80s and 90s when I was a young mum trying to figure it out without resources or support. Inside the program, I walk by the side of parents, helping them create resources that stick, reducing outbursts of the children, but also from the parents too, and rebuilding calm and connection in the home. I take parents through my APD Thrive framework and share the APD parental styles along with other tools and resources that I have. Each person on this inaugural programme will receive a paperback copy of my book and other resources that I have. And everyone who signs up to the wait list will receive a copy of my new ebook, Thriving with ADHD. We start on October the 22nd, and there are still a few spaces available at the introductory price. I don't know where, hopefully, Michaela, have you been able to put the link in the chat? Thank you for that. I've also got a slide that has a QR code if you'd like to. There's no cost to join the wait list, and it gives you the opportunity to schedule a 30-minute chat with me to talk about your particular situation and to see if the programme would be of value to you. And for those in leadership or human resource roles, while this programme is for parents, the principles that you've heard today apply in professional life too. Whether it's supporting staff, colleagues, or even yourself, spotting patterns, making small intentional changes, and adopting the ADHD mindset can shift the culture of a workplace just as much as it can shift the culture of a home. Please reach out to me for a chat to see how I can support you and your colleagues. You can use the same link as it gives you the opportunity to schedule a complimentary chat with me. And as a thank you all for showing up today and registering for my talk, you will receive a guide. It's called Your Guide to Breaking the 3 Patterns That Keep Families Stuck, along with a video of the recording today. So I'll send those out after the session. But if you're ready, or you know someone who's ready to move their family from chaos to calm, click the link, send them the QR code, and secure your spot. This is an opportunity to create the change that you've been longing for. If you want your home to feel calmer and your parenting to feel lighter, come and join the programme. I want to finish with a story of hope. I know what it feels like to live in a house full of love and yet feel like every day is a battle. I've been a mum who had no answers, and I've been the grandmother watching the next generation face the same struggles. I've also seen what's possible when parents get the right support, make small, consistent changes, and shift their mindset. Families who once felt broken can rediscover joy. Children who once felt like failures can begin to shine. When I began my journey with ADHD coaching, one of my grandsons was struggling. If you've read my book, you know our journey. He had a few friends, low self-confidence, and school was overwhelming for him. Our family felt stuck in worry and chaos. Fast forward to today, he's thriving. He enjoys school and he has friends. He's doing well academically. And just recently, he had his very first birthday party with friends. Watching him laugh and enjoy himself surrounded by children who wanted to be there for him was one of my proudest moments. That transformation didn't come from quick fixes. It came from support, structure, and believing in him and my daughter. So I'll leave you with this thought. 6 months from now, do you still want to be firefighting every day? Or do you want to be celebrating calm and confidence in your home? Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Jean. That was really inspiring and illuminating as well. There are some interesting thoughts and answers to your reflective questions in the chat. Interestingly, I think over-explaining is something that several of us on this call tend to opt for, although several people have said all three. Yeah, we kind of cycle through them, I'm sure. I totally understand that. So how do you stop yourself from over explaining, just thinking if you put the idea, the concept you're trying to get across, the instructions into one more simple format? How do you stop yourself doing that? Or what's a good way to kind of step back from it?
I think being aware that over explaining is something that you do, if it's something that you do and you're aware of it, then you can kind of take a deep breath before you go into that approach of over explaining. I remember, you know, I watch my children parent their children as a grandmother. Um, and I was often quite curious about the need to explain everything. And I see that in a lot of parents, younger parents these days, that they feel they have to explain the detail. And if they don't get the detail across, then they'll try again and again. And I think when you're aware that's what you do, if you just take that deep breath to say, okay, and now that you're aware, if you're aware that your child may have a developmental issue or concern, then it's about how can I get across what it is I'd like them to do. Being aware that some children struggle with more than one or two instructions at a time. And so it's thinking about the instructions that you're about to share. So if you're asking your child, for example, that their room needs tidying because it's a mess, focus on one area in that room for them to do so they can focus on one thing. So it might be that there's dirty washing on the floor with all the other stuff that's there. Get them to focus on that one item rather than tidy your room. They're going to their room and they're not knowing where to start. Does that answer your question, Liz?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It's sort of think in advance and don't even get, if you can, stop yourself getting into that sort of cycle of
Yeah.
just thinking one more explanation will do. And yes, I really like that idea of focusing on one very specific thing. I recognize that
Yeah.
absolutely. So, does anybody else have questions? I'm sure lots of people have a lot of thoughts that have come up in this. Does anybody have specific questions for Jean? Just put your hand up or shout out or just responses. Paula.
Hey, hey,
Hi.
hey, Jean.
Hi.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that was fabulous. I love your program. When you use the car analogy, I put in the comments, speaking to someone with a 52 as at the age of 52, like 3.5 years ago, or however long it was, a 52-year old diagnosis of ADHD, and then hearing, like, I've known you for some time, and I've got your book as well, which I must admit I haven't read it one step at a time yet. But when you said about the car analogy, as someone with ADHD, I feel like it's like we have self-driving cars, and we're running on the old software. So the software needs updating because we're working to an old paradigm that doesn't function. So then you said about your program. So then I dropped in like, yes, software update. You're literally giving the people with the self-driving cars a software update, so they're not kind of crashing into walls and pedestrians and like extending the metaphor there rather than carnage. But I think it's fabulous what you do. You know, we've had some connections as well. I've been deep in monk mode with my ADHD and time blind to everything else that's going on. And I've got to say, hearing someone who has lived it as a parent and now has the grandchildren, oh gosh, I'm in tears to my eyes hearing your grandson. Oh gosh, gosh, I'm welling up to hear him having a party and enjoying the part. Like, oh gosh, Jean, my hat's off to you. I really respect your work. I love your models. I feel so blessed to know you, and I think that, you know, 10,000 people having an impact from what you're doing is a bare minimum, because there's millions, if not billions, of people in this world that are struggling, and your model can help them upgrade their software to something that means they've got a life that they can enjoy with love. and everyone deserves that. So I just want seeing your growth and what you're doing and the articulation of your mission. I think it's beautiful, and I think you can be super proud of, you know, you get the Grandma of the Year award from me, that's for sure.
Thank you, Paula. I'll take it.
That's great. Anybody else got a question or a comment they'd like to ask Jean?
I can see that Kelly's put a question in the chat.
Oh, right. Yes, Kelly.
What advice would you give to a parent who is just starting the journey for an assessment for their child who may have ADHD? That's a great question, Kelly. Thank you so much. I would say it's a bit like I was saying about the patterns. It's about, well, for an assessment, firstly, you need to have the evidence to be able to support the challenges that your child is facing. And I do have a resource that I share with parents that if anybody is interested, whether you're listening to this as a recording afterwards or if you're here, I have a resource that will help you compile the information in a way that will support the conversation that you would need to have with your GP or psychiatrist, whoever it is you're going to get the assessment from. It's important to be able to articulate what the challenges are at what age group, because the medical professionals who do the assessments, they are looking for specific symptoms. They use a manual called the DSM-5, which outlines various mental health conditions, and there are specific symptoms that they're looking for. And so the resource that I have helps you to collate the information in such a way that it helps them to identify what they're looking for. It helps you to clarify what's actually going on, what the challenges are that your child is facing, or you as an adult are facing it. So it might be for a child, it might be for an adult, it could be for a young person. But evidence is what they'll be looking for. So it's capturing that information. What patterns are you seeing? When do the challenges occur? What are the situations that occur? How does the individual regulate themselves after the impact? What causes the impact? It's all that type of information needs to be gathered to support you in then having that conversation. The initial conversation is more likely to be with your GP, but then onwards from there. Plus, you've got that information documented somewhere that you'll be able to take with you to whichever appointments you need to go to. It might even be having that conversation with the school. I'm a real advocate, and based on the support that I've given my daughter and the times that I've been in meetings with her and talking with various professionals, having that information is really, really valuable to you and will support you on your journey throughout. I hope that answers your question okay, Kelly. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Jean, I also have a grandson with ADHD who's and the route that my son and daughter-in-law have taken has been through the school to get the assessment. Do you recommend going through a school or going through your GP? What's the quickest way? Because one of the problems is the time it's all taking in the UK at the moment for getting the assessments, because there are so many children now joining the queue.
It's challenging, and I don't know that there is a quickest way, to be honest, and some of it will depend on where you live and the facility available, but you can go through the school. That is one way, and I believe that it's important to collaborate with your child's school, work with the school teacher, because you also want to understand how they are impacted at school, in the classroom and in the playground with other children. Yeah, those relationships that they have. So if you're aware of the symptoms of ADHD and you think your child may have the condition, I would talk to the teacher and have that conversation. They may support you, as I've put in the book, and the process that we went through. It was a teacher that supported my daughter initially and helped to identify that there may have been a challenge there, and she gave us some guidance and the steps to take. So the school is a great place to start. You can also go to your GP, and I would say that I don't have any figures. all I have are anecdotes, but there are still medical professionals who don't believe that ADHD is a real condition or is a real issue. And so it's important to follow as many different avenues as you can. If your GP doesn't support you, you might choose to go to another GP until you find one who does. There are also organisations where you can get assessments done privately. And there are various local organisations. And I'm thinking about the local councils. I mean, I work in Buckinghamshire, and I know that Buckinghamshire have just received some funding, for example, to put more resources available, and they're kind of combining the various resources that support families. Excuse me, a family network hub, I think we're called now, to link those resources up so that you can signpost parents to whichever support is needed. But it does depend where you live. It does depend on the resources that are available. I don't think there is any quick route. Right to choose is another option. And I'll have to send you, I'll make sure that I put that in my link when I send you an email afterwards with details of the recording. I can put the right to choose website in there as well. So if your GP doesn't support you, you have a right to choose, and you might choose to go to another organisation that will support you, and that process will help you to find the right medical professional support. I'm sure that's right, but I'll put that detail in the information.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And do you think it's important, once diagnosed, to get an EHCP? I always forget which way around it goes. Education, health. Yes.
Education Healthcare Plan, EHCP is the acronym. Absolutely. I think that talking to your child's school or educational setting will help you decide on the appropriate course of action. What I will say is that it is not the school who decides whether your child needs an EHCP or not. I've talked to parents who have said they were told by the school their child doesn't need an EHCP. Now, if your child is really struggling in school and you understand what the support the EHCP can give your child, and you feel that's the route that you want to go, then you can go that route on your own. The school doesn't need to support you. It helps if they support you because it will make that process smoother. The local council also will contact the school, so to have them on side is a great thing to do. The EHCP goes from 0 to 25 years, so it will travel through your child's educational process, so it's a great support. I've also worked with clients who have gained an EHCP at university, for example, or they've been able to use their EHCP at university to get the adjustments and the support that they need. So an EHCP is valuable. It's a legal document. So whatever's written in that document has to be delivered by the educational setting. So it's important that if you do have an EHCP, that you ensure that it's written correctly, that it clearly states the issues and the challenges and what is expected, what those outcomes are expected. And there are organisations that can help families to ensure that they will read the document to make sure that it's being compiled correctly. Some people think that having an EHCP is the end game. You know, I've got an EHCP, I can walk away now. That isn't the case. The EHCP is almost sometimes the starting point. You know your child has now got the support. It's clearly understood what their challenges are and what's needed. But as a parent, you still need to keep on top of that. You still need to make sure that the EHCP is being delivered by the educational setting. And if it's not, you need to challenge that. You need to follow up on any meetings that you have with the school or of the other professionals that you're working with. An EHCP is valuable, as a valuable support mechanism, but it doesn't stop with it being in place, and as a parent walking away, you still have work to do.
essentially, as a parent or maybe even grandparent, you're a lifelong advocate for your child or person with ADHD, aren't you? Nick says, Jean, great talk for parents, grandchildren, and managers. Wish we knew about this when managing people. Guilt as parents is so true. What did we do wrong? What should we have done better? Is it our fault? Thank you, Jean. I'm interested to hear about the kind of management side and, you know, in the workplace and how managers can become more informed and perhaps recognize symptoms of ADHD in their teams.
It's an interesting one, and it will vary from organisation to organisation. And so let me put it in the two camps. So one camp is adults in the workplace who may have been diagnosed with ADHD. They decide to disclose their ADHD to their employers. So they are then able to request certain accommodations, so the support that they need in the workplace to be able to do their jobs. I have worked with clients who have disclosed, and they've had great support from their employers to support them in doing their jobs. Also, the UK government has a scheme called Access to Work, where individuals can get funding for resources and tools to support them in their role. And that funding comes from the government, supported by the employer. So the employer needs to be involved in that process. The Access to Work also will pay for coaching, just so if nobody's aware of that. You can also get coaching, funding for coaching as part of that process. So if it's going well in the workplace, it's great, and the individual is well supported. There are those who disclose in the workplace and it doesn't go so well. And I've heard of experiences where the line managers then disclose that information to the rest of the team. Not in a bad way. Their intention is so that everybody's aware of it and can support the individual. But that was done without consultation with the individual who has the diagnosis. So that then puts the individual on the back foot in a difficult place. There have also been situations where individuals have been blamed because of their ADHD. Yeah, so they've been blamed for things and it's been used against them because of the challenges they face in the workplace, which is really, really difficult. So that's one side of the story. And then the other side is those that have ADHD or believe they have ADHD and they don't disclose it in the workplace. And so it may be that they're struggling, perhaps their performance is being challenged because they are struggling for whatever reason. And often the struggle comes, in my experience, through something changing. Because they've been able to manage, they've had strategies that have worked for them up to a certain point, and then something changes and they are now struggling in the workplace. So that is a challenge. And what I do as a coach is can help the individual manage their situation to support them in getting what they need so that they are no longer struggling. It may be that actually life has changed for them. They know the company's values no longer match their values. Perhaps they no longer enjoy the job that they're doing, and perhaps it's now about transitioning into something else. So it does depend on the individual situation and what's going on for them in their lives. But employers, I think it's about being aware of the potential symptoms of ADHD, but also simplifying, perhaps putting in place some of the things I mentioned in my talk about clarity on what's expected, cutting down perhaps the length of emails, the number of emails, the workload that's given to individuals, and just breaking things down a bit so that all individuals, everyone in the team is able to cope. I know that there's a lot of for employers at the moment, it's really difficult and resourcing is tight in some organisations, and that can put the load on others that are remaining in the team. But being aware of the impacts that can have. I spoke to a lady only last week about how she was feeling in the workplace. She's overloaded, overwhelmed with work, and is thinking about going off sick because she is really struggling. And Some organisations have the right support in place, some organisations don't. It's really difficult to give a global answer because it will depend on the organisation and their culture and what they have to deal with. But yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks, Jean. That's very helpful. Michaela, you've got your hand up.
Brilliant talk, Jean. Every time I see you talk, I'm just blown away, and I just love the analogies, and I think everybody related to them differently and had their favourite one, but I really like the rose one. Being a horticulturalist by trade, that really resonated with me. The rambling roses, and yeah, anyway, I won't harp on about that because I really could. But I said in the chat, workplaces are gradually becoming more aware and supportive of employees with ADHD to a degree. Is there any sort of recognition or support for employees who have children with ADHD? Is it less, or does it even exist at all? And the reason I ask this is because you mentioned at the beginning of your talk how you can have a disastrous morning and that will frame the whole day. And so I'm just thinking to myself, I would imagine in any reasonably large organization, there will be a lot of parents there that have got children with ADHD. From a sort of an HR reward and benefit point of view, I would imagine it would be great for them to offer, for instance, somebody like you to go in or to have those to do a group program with those people, so that not only from an attraction and a retention point of view in terms of employment, it's also going to help their employees perform that much better if they arrive at work having had a calm morning instead of an all hell breaking loose and then, oh God, I'm late again, and all of my colleagues are going to be sort of getting annoyed with me and all the rest of it. And I just wonder, is that have you come across that as something that workplaces offer, or is that something you yourself could to offer workplaces?
Thank you for that, Michaela. You're so right. It's not something that I'm aware of, and that's something that would be part of the human resources or wellness, health and wellness department, perhaps depends on the departments that they have in organizations. But absolutely, it's something that I could do. I come from a human resources background, and there is health and wellness, but I'm not aware of any particular, and it may have changed because it's been quite a while that I've been out of the workplace, but I'm not aware of anything specific that's available at the moment for employees for ADHD specifically or neurodiversity specifically. So I like that question, and I'm going to look into it and find out if there is any.
That would be a nice, if you come from an HR background, that would be that you would be really well positioned to offer that, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I could definitely offer going into workplaces, and I'd love to be able to do that, to work with employees, even with managers and supervisors, so that they have that understanding and awareness so that they can support their employees better. As I said, employees who feel supported are going to be more productive. And at the end of the day, that's what we want for organizations, right? So that they are productive and that their employees are producing and delivering as they need to. So thank you, Michaela, for that. Love to do that.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely great idea. And yes, offering workshops for managers, I think, I really think that could probably be taken up very easily. Has anybody got one last question or comment for Jean? It's 2:00 now, and we've had a brilliant talk. And yes, Mary, you've got your hand up.
Just unmute myself. A couple of quick things that just struck me on the just little points, things that arise with us when we're talking to people. But and one from on the over explaining thing, it's also sometimes knowing when to just stop talking. It could be saying the same thing all over again or going on to something else. And like Jean, my children grew up when we had no idea about ADHD, and my daughter was very good at saying "mum," but she knew I was going to have the last word, and she knew if I think I'm going to have the last word, I'm either going to make it worse or it's never going to be the last word, it's going to go on. And she would just say, "Mum, stop it." So that was quite handy just to stop. But also the thing about explaining reminds me about when you're trying to, this is within the home, but then there's all their family and friends who aren't going to understand it, and also people at work. We talk to people quite a bit about when they're trying to disclose about the ADHD or explain to people about it, and how if you say, well, I've got ADHD or my child's got ADHD, this will mean something different to every person you say it to. So we try and get them to think in it, first of all, what does it mean to that child in that situation, or what does it mean as far as you at work, so that you can say to them, my brain is such that I need this and this. I'm good at that, but I need something else, you know, so that they can put it in a certain way without feeling it's always something wrong with them. But so sometimes it's not it's not like a reason to over-explain, but to explain clearly. Think before you think, what is it, so that that person actually gets what they need to know. So that was just a couple of things I thought of, which arises for us in our groups.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much.
Yes, my daughter once said to me, when you keep speaking at me, every word feels like a stone you're throwing at me. And that really brought me up sharp and made me think, wow, yeah, that isn't nice. That's not what I want to be happening.
That's why I think some of the things that when James said what difference might make a difference in your home or with your colleagues or your children, whatever, by making some little changes. For me, I thought less frustration, because otherwise there's this constant frustration and impatience feeling about things being wrong. But once you make those little changes and think to yourself, it's the way their brain works, what will they need, would be help. I think that frustration that we feel.
Thank you so much, Mary. Can I just share with everybody that's still here that Mary was a mentor of mine when I first started my journey with ADHD, and she runs a support group in Oxford. So I'm so appreciative for the support that you gave me, Mary. Thank you so much.
It's great to know you, Jane, and really we recommend you, as you know. Yeah, our next meetings are next week. We do the for adult ADHD on the last Tuesday on Zoom, last Tuesday of the month, and parents for parents is on the first Wednesday of the month, and then every 2 months we have a face-to-face meeting in Ensham. But it's ADHD Oxfordshire, so we're quite easy to find if you look up the ADHD Oxfordshire support.
That's great. And Sarah says we have 2 children, one 26 and one 9, who both have ADHD but present in very different ways. And I think that's also something you've touched on, Jean, that it's different for every person.
Absolutely. And my family, there are a couple of boys in my family, and one is diagnosed, one's not yet diagnosed, but you can see that the symptoms, but presenting very differently.
Interesting. Yeah. Paula, I'm going to make your question last.
Yeah, just a quick one. What I wanted to say is, because I've been doing, as you know, Jean, I've been doing a massive amount of research around this and trying to explore answers for myself. And how I see things is, from my personal point of view, I'm more heart-centric in how I respond to things, more sensitive. And so words are more head-centric. And those words aren't necessarily my words. So it's like hearing acronyms or stuff that isn't relevant to me. So, you know, like matters of the heart, someone who's with words, they might resort to poetry or say, I'm lost for words when it comes to speaking about love. So it's more ephemeral and ethereal. So it's just, you don't need lots of words, that when the words aren't the words that you'd use, or they don't make sense, or you're trying to speak about something that's a feeling, not a thought. And I just think it's so important to understand that there's a difference, because it must be heartbreaking as a parent to hear that your words are like stones at me. That's a heartbreaking thing to hear, because that's not what your intention is at all. So I just wanted to speak of that, because these matters of the heart, I think if you're more sensitive, and then things are going to feel more sensitive. You're literally hearing things more, feeling things more, seeing things more. And so, it's like, in just a quick one on emails, it's almost like you can have an email with a drop down toggle, and you give the nutshell, and then I call it nutshell and kernel. You get the longer form for the people that need more information, but the nutshell for people like, yeah, I get it, you don't need to explain it, it's obvious. So anyway, I just thought I'd drop that one.
Thanks, Paula.
Well, Jean, thank you so much. This has been such an interesting and enlightening and inspiring session. I think everybody has got the links, and we're certainly, when we post this, the links will be there to connect with you. So thank you so much to you, Jean. Thank you to everybody who was here, and to all your interesting comments and questions, and I think it's been a really fantastic session. So thank you, everybody, and see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.